Oh, man. Oh, that was a good game. Well, on to the next one on the backlog. I don't remember putting you out. Whatever. Right, what should we play?
Play E6.
Well, E6 is on my backlog, adult, but, you know, I think I've had a little bit too much of Ys at the moment. Maybe I'll play something else.
Play E6.
Yeah, but adult, I've got it on my backlog, alright? I will play it this year, but, you know, I've got Ys 9, I've got Sakuna, I've got Trails from Zero. You know, I could play all those.
Play Ys 6.
You're not going to let this go, are you? Alright, fine. I'll play it. I'm only doing this because I like you, adult, but you're really pushing your luck at the moment. Alright, let's have a little look anyway. Ys 6, Ys 6. Looks pretty good, as I would expect from Ys. Huh? Furries. I've been playing a bunch of Ys games lately, partly because I wanted to be clued up for Ys 9, which I have since finished, but also because I just like the series, and as I continued to express my desire to play more, I inevitably started getting suggestions of what games to prioritise, and one of the names that popped up was Ys 6 Ark of Napishtim. At the time, this was the first new Ys title to be released by Falcom in nearly a decade, excluding the remakes of Ys 1 and 2, and was first given the green light on Windows PC in 2003. This would then be followed by subsequent distributions on PlayStation 2 and PSP, and was eventually given a localization by Xseed in 2015 for Windows once again, being readily available on Steam since that point. And this is indeed the version I went with, and like most of my reviews, there will also be minor spoilers confined to the first 10 minutes or so of the game. You heard that right, just 10 minutes. With Adol once again embarking on an adventure to challenge the impossible, let's see what mischief Falcom's most recognisable protag gets up to this time. And I'm not saying that for flair either, Adol is the most recognisable Falcom character out there. Look at the poll. It wouldn't be an Ys game if it didn't start with nautical ineptitude. Adol's got the t-shirt signed and printed all over Africa by this point. It's a continent in the world of Ys, I wasn't being ignorant. This time it turns out that his ship was attacked by a roaming Roman fleet, which caused him to fall off and die. Sorry, drift ashore. Eventually he's found by two human-like figures with bushy tails and taken back to their village to recover from his wounds. Eventually after recovering, Adol is asked to leave, but before he does, he bumps into one of his rescuers who promptly... love interest already. She's a bit young, ain't she, Adol? Runs away. From there, the adventure begins. Now what you'll notice immediately is that Ark of Napishtim is very hands-off with its approach. If you think you'll be getting novelties like a quest tracker or a minimap, then think again. I don't even recall getting a tutorial on how the game works, and in that respect, Ys 6 is very much an old school experience. There's a sizable amount of responsibility put on the player to figure things out for themselves, and honestly, I really like that. The game's simple enough that you don't really need your hand held during your experience, outside of one mechanic which we'll touch on later. But that learning curve is part of the fun of Ys 6, as is the lack of direction given to you to advance the story. Instead of just having a marker put on a map, you're encouraged to get stuck into the new world, which, in my mind, is what Ys games are all about, exploring and charting the unknown. Now even though you won't get many hints outside of a few visual cues, you won't go in completely blind either if you engage that age-old tactic of Falcom games, talking to the NPCs. Though they have more purposes than just this, they will also give some pointers as to where you should go, and also where you shouldn't go. And trust me, Ys 6 is not afraid to punish you for daring to trespass in the wrong areas. Oh, you're going to go over those barriers? Blech. Ys 6 really does embody that vintage style of yesteryear. A lot of importance is put on the idea of leveling up and improving your equipment. There are times where you'll jump into a horde of enemies or even a boss fight and you literally will not even be able to damage it because you're not at the level you should be. The only way to fix that is to grind, which ultimately means you're going to be doing a lot of fighting. Now, the combat itself wasn't entirely new from Falcon, but it was an evolution of the system used in Ys 5, giving the player a lot more freedom with how they move Adol. Instead of the odd bumping mechanic, you have an attack button this time around with the ability to jump. And as the game continues, you'll also get the ability to swap your weapon to suit your favourite playstyle. Some will have long reach, others will have fast combos, and each weapon will utilise its own unique ability which will grow stronger as you upgrade your equipment. This particular facet would later be refined in Oath and Felghana and Ys Origin. Now, being the first of its ilk, Ark of Napishtim is admittedly rough around the edges, but it does the basics well. For one thing, the controls are very tight and it's quite satisfying smashing enemies down with simple but precise movements and combos. Naturally though, because of the nature and directness of the combat, it does require other aspects of the game to follow suit. For example, the bosses that you'll bump into periodically aren't the greatest, as they're severely limited by the fact that Adol himself has a relatively small arsenal of moves, but they are a spectacle at the very least, and in some cases quite creative. And since we're touching on spectacle, I think it's time to go over the best part of Ys 6, the exploration. It is an absolute joy, and I think a large part of that comes down to the region itself. The Canaan Islands are admittedly small in size, but feel lush, alive, and are further supported by a fantastic soundtrack courtesy of Sound Team JDK. The song for Cortera Woods and the final boss theme in particular stand out to me, and give this sense of embarking on a new adventure or challenging the impossible. I can't extend that praise unanimously to the dungeons, as some of them are quite uninspired. One during the game's midpoint stands out to me, but the overworld exploration more than makes up for that. Ys 6 encapsulates that special feeling that comes from this series. I also have to mention the beautiful art style as well. I mean, Falcon games will never be known for their graphical achievement, but there's just a certain charm that comes with this 3D environment interlaced with the pre-rendered sprites and backgrounds. It also places a lot more importance on the sprite art and dialogue during conversations to evoke the emotion behind a scene, and I'd say that Ys 6 delivers on that front too. No line feels wasted, which is a good thing really, considering the game's runtime clocks in at around 10 hours. Despite that seeming shortcoming though, the main characters felt fleshed out enough, and I think that was because I made a point of walking around and witnessing the changes around me as the key events pass by. It's really enriched the experience for me to see that development firsthand. Unfortunately though, that praise for narrative doesn't extend to all the characters. The main antagonist in particular is bare bones, to be honest, with the odd sprinkling of backstory here and there, so you don't really get a chance to connect with their mindset, as Falcon so often do with their morally grey characters. But I'd say the majority of the cast members make up for that shortcoming overall. That being said though, it's not just the more intricate narrative experience that makes exploration so stellar. Running off the beaten track also ties into progression, another strong point of Ys 6. Talking to NPCs will in some case yield quests for you to partake in, and though they are not the most groundbreaking events in the world, they're a nice addition to divide your time to, and in many cases well worth the effort. That praise also extends to the random treasures you find dotted around the world. I'm not kidding, there is a huge amount of stuff off the beaten path in this game, ranging from items to aid you in battle and scaling all the way to supporting narrative for the main story. And if you want to get all of it, you're gonna need to master the limited options available to you, one in particular being very important. You see, you can jump, you can do some odd platforming here and there, you could even use your weapon combos to traverse seemingly impossible But there are also moments where you will need to do a dash jump. What the hell's a dash jump? Now this is where the lack of tutorial does come as a hindrance. The game lets you know you can do a dash jump, but doesn't tell you how, and it is asinine in its design. Instead of being mapped to say jump and forward attack, you have to slightly tap in a direction, then pause, and then press jump and attack together. And if you jump too early or your step was a pixel off, you will fail the maneuver. Come on. Come on! Come on! This move was a pain to learn. After the 50th attempt, I could at least do it 3 times in a row by that point, but it's the fact that it ties in with very precise platforming at times. I mean, look at this. And then if you fall, you gotta go all the way back and try again, and do it in a row as well. Oh, but TKN, you said that no tutorials is a good thing. Yes, I did say the lack of handholding was a positive, but there are limits. Maybe I just suck and I gotta get better at the game, but this mechanic in particular should have been taught to the player through an earlier segment of the game. Partly because of how integral it is to your experience, but also because of how difficult it is to execute without a guide. I mean, it says a lot when one of the recommended options on Google search is E6 dash jump. And like I say, you need this maneuver if you want all the goodies on offer. Thankfully, many of the items you do get are well worth the effort, as they are with the quests, being a major boon as you continue your adventure on the islands. And what of that main adventure? Does the main story hold up in this case? I would say it does. Though the journey is short, it's a solid enough narrative to be worth your time. Yes, it has the odd limitations here and there that I feel stem mostly from the fact that it's an older Ys game, but it more than holds its own and even draws on some interconnectivity to spice up the experience even more. A nice nod to the veterans of the series. The characters are decent, the premise is intriguing, and it's executed well enough. I can't really say more than that. Overall, I very much enjoyed my experience with Ys 6. Ark of Napishtim may not have the glitz and glamour of the younger and more hip entries in Falcom's long-running stalwarts, but I see it as the cool uncle who regiles you with engrossing stories of their travels. The Ys series has a knack for psyching you up for journeys to the unknown, something that has existed since its iteration. That feeling of adventure, that euphoria of discovery. It does what you would expect from an Ys title. And though I can't see it being a favourite among many modern fans, it is well worth the playthrough. Put simply, boot up your system for Napishtim. Nailed it.